Good Housekeeping. Module 1. Module 1 reviews the background of the MS4 general permit and the need for the Good Housekeeping training. Module 1 also answers the question, what is a SWP? And steps through the required elements of a SWP, a Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan. So all of you, each of your municipalities are regulated for the discharge of stormwater from your municipal separate storm sewer system to waters of the United States. Generally speaking, waters of the United States, as per the Clean Water Act jurisdiction guidance provided in 2008, as a result of the Supreme Court's decision in 2 cases, includes traditional navigable waters, wetlands adjacent to traditional navigable waters, non-navigable tributaries of traditional navigable waters that are relatively permanent, where the tributaries typically flow year-round or have continuous flow at least seasonally, for example, typically 3 months, and wetlands that directly abut such tributaries. According to the EPA's website, the definition of waters of the United States currently in effect is the definition promulgated in 1986-1988, implemented consistent with subsequent Supreme Court decisions and guidance documents. The 2015 revised regulatory definition of waters of the United States has been stayed by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit. In response to this stay, EPA, Department of Army, and Army Corps of Engineers resumed nationwide use of the agency's prior regulations defining the term waters of the United States. On February 28, 2017, the President of the United States issued an executive order directing EPA and Department of the Army to review and rescind or revise the 2015 rule. EPA, Department of Army, and the Army Corps of Engineers are in the process of reviewing the 2015 rule and considering a revised definition of waters of the United States consistent with the executive order. You're currently operating under the 2003 MS4 general permit, which has been administratively continued. And in Massachusetts, as you are probably all aware, the MS4 general permit is administered and issued by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And the MS4 general permit is broken up into 6 minimum control measures. So the 6 minimum control measures, just so everyone's on the same page, MCM1 is public education and outreach. MCM2 is public participation. MCM3 is illicit discharge detection and elimination program. MCM4, construction site stormwater runoff control. MCM5 is post-construction stormwater management. And MCM6, which we're here to talk about today, is good housekeeping and pollution prevention. But I want to make a note about MCM6. Today we're going to specifically talking about the development of a SWP and then the catch basin cleaning, inspection, and maintenance program. There are other requirements of MCM6 that we're not going to be specifically talking about today. That includes the development of an inventory of all your municipal operations and facilities, the development of O&M plans, and the street sweeping program, as well as a few other requirements. So I just want to give you the heads up that we're going to be talking about 2 specific components of MCM6. So a SWP. What is a SWP? It is a Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, and it needs to be a written document. But don't get confused and confuse it with a stormwater management program or stormwater management plan, which is also required by the MS4 general permit. Think of the stormwater management plan as the master plan for your MS4 general permit. It will outline the requirements of, or outline the ways, the intent of how the MS4, your community, will meet the requirements of the MS4 general permit. The SWP is specific to your facilities. And you probably are familiar with SWPP. It's not a new term. It's been used in other contexts outside of the MS4 general permit. And if you happen, we'll talk about it in a minute more about the multi-sector general permit, but if you happen to have a SWPP under the multi-sector general permit or a no exposure certification under the multi-sector general permit, an additional SWPP is not required under the MS4 program. So a side note, I just want to talk a few minutes about the multi-sector general permit, which is for industrial stormwater discharges. And it applies to select individual activities. As the name of the permit indicates, it's multi-sector. So there are a list of sectors starting from Sector A to Sector AD. You probably would most be familiar with Sector T, which is treatment works. So many municipal wastewater treatment plants are required to have a SWPP under the multi-sector general permit. And the permit applies to the primary or co-located industrial activities at a facility. And it's based on the SIC, the Standard Industrial Classification Code, on how you get pulled into the multi-sector general permit. There could be instances where your facility has a SWPP under the multi-sector general permit. For instance, transfer stations could be pulled in under Sector N, scrap, recycling, and waste recycling facilities, SIC code 5093. In particular, for recycling facilities that receive source-separated recyclable material, primarily from non-industrial and residential sources. If this were the case, a SWPP for that facility would not be needed under the MS4 general permit. Also, remember, if facilities are co-located, you only need one SWPP that covers both facilities. So what facilities require SWPPs under the MS4 general permit? All maintenance garages, public work yards, transfer stations, and other waste handling facilities that would have the potential for pollutants to be exposed to stormwater. And if you happen to have co-located facilities, say your public works garage and your maintenance garage are on the same site, only one SWPP is required for co-located facilities. Again, another side note, what is an O&M program? So I had mentioned that MCM6 requires the development of O&M program. So an O&M program are written operation and maintenance procedures. And I consider them mini SWPPs. They include a lot of the same information, but not as much detail. And the O&M program and procedures are required for specific operations and activities and facilities within your municipality. So parks and open space, buildings such as schools if they're under the jurisdiction of the municipality, your town offices, police and fire stations, municipal pools, and parking garages, as well as vehicle and equipment activities. So some examples of O&M topics that would be included in your O&M program would be the use, storage, and handling of products, landscaping activities and lawn care, pet waste handling, and waterfowl congregation. It also needs to include a training component, dumpsters and waste management, parking lot sweeping, spill prevention, and then vehicle fueling, storage, and washing. So back to a SWPP. What are the required elements of a SWPP? We will go into more detail on each one of these, but a SWPP must include a pollution prevention team, a description of the facility, both an identification of the potential pollutants as well as a map, identification of all the stormwater controls at the site, management practices that will be implemented to prevent pollution, an inspection component, and then of course record keeping. Just want to note that there is a template SWPP that has been developed by the Central Massachusetts Regional Stormwater Coalition, and it is available on their website. And there are also other SWPPs that are templates that are available and guidance on the development of SWPPs under the multi-sector general permit, which can be very helpful in the development of a SWPP because a lot of the components are similar and So there is guidance out there for you. So a pollution prevention team. You need to identify all the staff on the team by their name and their title, identify their roles on the team, and the role of the team itself is to develop, implement, maintain, and revise as necessary the SWPPP for the facility. So the description of the facility, you need to include a map and include stormwater outfalls, receiving waters, and any structural controls that are on the site. I would personally recommend that your map is very detailed, include a lot of information, more than the minimum. Include where you have all your potential pollutant sources and your activities that you have on your site. It's a good point of reference for implementation of your SWPPP. You could show flow direction so you have an understanding and your staff has an understanding of where the stormwater on your site discharges to. Then you also need to include in your SWPPP a description of activities, the potential pollutants associated with each activity, and the location of any floor drains. So what type of activities have the potential to impact stormwater at your municipal facilities? Vehicle and equipment maintenance, storage, fueling, and washing play a big part in potential pollutants, as well as material storage, handling, and use. Another activity that may occur on your site for those that have hydrants is hydrant flushing. What activities and areas at your facility are exposed to stormwater and have the potential to impact stormwater? So we've talked a little bit, very briefly, on the type of activities you have at your facility. So what do these type of facilities, what type of potential pollutants would they create? You could have fuel and oil, hydraulic fluid, antifreeze, solvents, and paints. You could have sediment and nutrients, as well as sand and salts, wash water from vehicle washing and detergents, iron oxide and metals, and trash, as well as misplaced recyclables, especially if you have, at a transfer station or if you accept recycling at your facility. So we've talked about the activities that you have on your site, what potential pollutants those activities create, and now we're going to talk about how you're going to control those pollutants and prevent the discharge of pollutants from your facility. So you need to implement measures to prevent or reduce the discharge of pollutants. And if you have discharges to a water quality limited receiving water, so a water body that does not meet its designated classification, then you'll require additional controls and evaluation. And your stormwater controls can be both structural and non-structural. Management practices is the heart of your SWPPP. And they are what type of practices that you implement on a day-to-day basis and over time to prevent pollution from your facility. And we will talk more about the management practices in Module 2, but I'm just going to list the activities now. So minimize or prevent exposure, good housekeeping, preventative maintenance, spill prevention and response, erosion and sediment control, management of runoff, salt storage piles or piles containing salt, employee training, and maintenance of control measures. So like I said, we'll go more in detail on the management practices in Module 2, but I want to review just a few examples of management practices that can be implemented for common areas and activities at your facility. So vehicle storage. You should store vehicles inside and under cover. For vehicles that require maintenance that are potentially leaking, you could put a drip pan under them to collect the product that is leaking. You should conduct all maintenance inside. And during the summer, when you're, say, storing your plows, you can cap your hydraulic lines. For fueling activities, you could keep them under cover with a canopy. Do not top off when you're fueling. And have a spill kit nearby. And make sure it's well stocked. Don't just have the kit. Make sure it has stuff in it. Some more examples of management practices in terms of storage of sand and salt. Make sure it's stored in sheds or covered in an enclosure, and you should sweep the materials that are on the ground when you're bringing material in and out of the storage area. So storage of petroleum products, label the containers. This is a very easy and effective control measure. Make sure you know what is in your containers. Have them clearly labeled so you don't have a question on, oh, what's in that bucket or what's in that drum. And it's preferred, and make sure for storage capacities that are great over the 55 gallons that they're labeled. Should provide secondary containment, and then protect them from vehicle traffic with barriers, bollards, or concrete berm. And then, so again, other type of materials, ensure that what you're storing the material in is compatible, it's in good condition, and it's tightly closed. It's not going to leak. Don't store liquid storage near your bay doors because they could get easily knocked over. And then use funnels or fill reels to transfer materials. A few examples of management practices that can be implemented for hydrant flushing include recognizing where the water is discharging, trying to increase the travel time of the water before it enters a storm drain, ditch, or water body to reduce the residual chlorine content, avoid erosion by using a diffuser or directing the water to an impervious area or a sheet of plywood in an effort to have its sheet flow towards a vegetated buffer, meadow, or wooded area. So I want to talk a little bit about vehicle and equipment washing. This is one of big areas of a SWPPP. So the preferred method of vehicle washing is indoors in a designated area, with the wash water discharging to the sewer through an oil water separator or to a Mass DEP approved certified tight tank that is hauled by a licensed hauler. Should limit the uses of detergents and use ones that are free of phosphates and regulated contaminants. Avoid using solvents unless it's in a self-contained parts washer. And if this is not an option to do vehicle washing indoors on your site, you could do light-duty vehicles at a commercial car wash or a mobile vehicle washing service. So if washing indoors is not an option and you can't do it off-site, outdoor washing is an option but requires more management. The wash water needs to discharge to a tight tank, or you need to implement pollution prevention procedures. The wash water cannot be discharged to a water body. Wash water cannot be discharged to a storm system without pretreatment. So no discharge to a water body, and if you discharge to a storm system, you need to have pretreatment. Examples of structural pretreatment BMPs include deep sump catch basins, oil grit separators, proprietary separators, sediment forebays, and vegetated filter strips. And then you need to remove any debris in the washing area and sweep it regularly. If you do outdoor washing, there should be no power washing, steam cleaning, or engine and undercarriage washing in the outdoor washing area. And there should be no washing of heavily soiled or salted vehicles in your outdoor washing area. So another component of your SWPPP is site inspections. All areas that are exposed to stormwater and all stormwater control measures need to be inspected on a quarterly basis. We'll talk more about inspections in Module 2. Record keeping is another component of the SWPPP. It's sometimes overlooked, but it's very important. You need to maintain documentation of required activities, so maintenance, inspection, and training. You need to maintain all records in the development of your SWPPP for a minimum of 5 years, and you need to make these records available to the public. Record keeping can be accomplished in the form of paper files, for instance in a 3-ring binder that includes the SWPPP itself and all supporting documents related to the development and implementation of the SWPPP, or with electronic files. It is recommended that all documents be kept together in the same location at a facility, whether it be a binder on a bookshelf, a file in a filing cabinet, or a folder on the computer. To make files available to the public, a copy of the SWP and accompanying records could be made available for the public to view during normal business hours or posted online for the public to view. A reasonable fee for copying requests by the public may be charged. In summary, the following are links to resources referenced in Module 1.